Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan, and the topic of this 10-minute moan is my old friend Humza Yousaf and how many times he can tell lies in 90 seconds. Now, what I'm going to concentrate on is a recent podcast that Humza done as a guest, and I'm just going to show you the clip. It's about 90 seconds long, right? And then I'm going to dissect how many inaccuracies Humza can manage within 90 seconds when he's talking about his favourite subject of Gaza. Here's the video.
A government agency, the Scottish Enterprise, was giving grants to arms companies supplying weapons to Israel. How do you explain this contradiction?
No, so very easily, actually. It's not a contradiction. The money that Scottish Enterprise had given, and this was, by the way, of course, before the terrible atrocities, was actually given to a number of arms companies to diversify away from arms.
But how do companies like Raytheon and BAE diversify away from arms?
Well, instead of putting their efforts and energy into arms, they can look at other areas of exploration, space exploration, for example, or some other areas of technology, as an example. So we want companies in Scotland to diversify away from the arms trade. But look, all of this.
But that's not what pressure groups were saying.
Pardon?
That's not what pressure groups in Scotland have been saying.
Look, I think you could probably look on the record if you wish. And you've got every right, of course, to ask me the questions that you're asking. But I don't think there can be any doubt whatsoever about the Scottish Government's position on the issue of Gaza. I was the first European leader to call for a ceasefire.
Were you? Aye. Right, so that's the thing, right? And you've probably yourself went, that doesn't sound right, and that's not accurate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just look at some of the claims he's made individually and discuss them. So let's have a listen to his first claim about the situation.
A government agency, the Scottish Enterprise, was giving grants to arms companies supplying weapons to Israel. How do you explain this contradiction?
No, so very easily, actually. It's not a contradiction. The money that Scottish Enterprise had given, and this was, by the way, of course, before the terrible atrocities, was...
Okay, so you've heard it first there. It was before the terrible atrocities. So here's some claims. Raytheon, BAE Systems and Leonardo have all received six-figure grants from business agency Scottish Enterprise since Israel began bombing Gaza in relation for Hamas terror attack on the 7th of October, which killed around 1,200 people. Humza quite clearly tells you that didn't happen. He tells you it was after the atrocities began. Now, here's another thing from The National, a well-known pro-independence, quite like the SNP newspaper. They have many SNP MPs and MSPs as feature writers, not feature writers, column writers in their paper. And they reported Raytheon, which has a base in Glenrothes 5, was paid £250,000 on February the 14th, 2024, for an unspecified research project which would focus on new markets and customers. The company supplies the missiles for Israel's Iron Dome defence system and also made smart bombs for the country's military. That doesn't sound as if it's after the atrocities. So let's listen to another small clip from the podcast.
It's actually given to a number of arms companies to diversify away from arms.
So this ties into the narrative discussed that the National commented on, saying it was for new markets and customers. But that doesn't really say it's not armaments and it's not for making bombs, because what happens is the Scottish Government, as you'll see in an FOI response here, they claim Scottish Government provides business support primarily through its enterprise and skills agencies, with specific regards to those companies that operate partially or wholly in defence markets. It remains a long-standing position that funding support is not provided for the direct manufacture of munitions. So what they try to say is they will give money to munitions businesses as grants, but not to make munitions. But there's no proof of that, because as we look back to the National piece, it said for unspecified research. So Scottish Enterprise don't really know what it is these companies are going to do with their money. So let's listen to another piece of the interview.
But how do companies like Raytheon and BAE diversify away from arms?
Well, instead of putting their efforts and energy into arms, they can look at other areas of exploration, space exploration, for example, or some other areas of technology, as an example. So we want companies in Scotland to diversify away from the arms trade. But
so we're going down this narrative again of the arms trade, right? Now, on the other FOI from the Scottish Government about the money that they give, they go on to tell us that Scottish Enterprise do human rights due diligence process, and they do list the companies that they've gave money to, but it's not for making bombs. It's not for munitions, etc. So when you go into the Scottish Enterprise, because that's where this FOI from Scottish Government tell you to go, they have a page on their website where they list freedom of information requests and responses. So you can go on and you can ask them and they'll publish the results. However, there's none published since the 18th of May 2022. Nothing. 2 and a bit years, no public responses. But when you look down the list, you'll see that prior to that, there was 3, 5, 6 per month, but not a single response publicly listed since the 18th of May 2026. So the Scottish Enterprise don't even provide evidence of what these things are used for when the grants are given. However, the National have reported that at least the £250,000 in February of this year was given for an unspecified research. Doesn't really tie together, does it? Let's listen to yet another piece of Humza talking nonsense.
all of this.
But that's not what pressure groups were saying.
Pardon?
That's not what pressure groups in Scotland have been saying.
I think you could probably look on the record if you wish. And you've got every right, of course, to ask me the questions that you're asking. But
Right, so what it does there is fantastic. It does a thing that a lot of politicians do. When they're asked a question and they want to buy time, the first thing he does is he says, pardon?
Pardon?
To get the person to repeat their question, buying them some time. Then, after the second time, he then goes on to say that you've got every right to ask that question and blubs some more nonsense. That again is a ploy just to make him, give him some more time to process an answer.
Have been saying.
I think you could probably look on the record if you wish. And you've got every right, of course, to ask me the questions that you're asking. But
now, the other point I want to bring up is why did the Scottish Government need to fund these people? Why should we, the Scottish taxpayer, pay for investments in these companies? And the amounts of them. Now, this before they sort of stop talking to people, is the figures from the Scottish Enterprise. In 1 year, £6,350,755 to all these companies in 1 year. And it just beggars belief to me. And like I said, these companies, they're owned by like BlackRock and stuff, big massive companies. They're no shy a bob or two, and they're not making profit, or big companies when they be investing in them. But we've to give £6 million odds per year minimum. Might be years that we've gave more to these businesses, and it's absolutely stinking. Now we'll look at the last claim by Humza.
I don't think there can be any doubt whatsoever about the Scottish Government's position on the issue of Gaza. I was the first European leader to call for a ceasefire.
Well, yeah, no having it. What you asked for on the 27th of October, nearly 3 weeks after the atrocities started, you asked, the Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf has written to the UK political leaders urging them to support an immediate ceasefire in Gaza to allow a humanitarian corridor to open. You weren't asking for an end of the war. You were asking for a pause to allow a corridor to be granted to let aid in. The first person to ask for a ceasefire in Europe was Macron. About a week, 10 days later, I think it was the 7th of November, he was the first European leader to say we should just have a ceasefire. Can we look at ways of stopping this war? What you said before that was a temporary to let a corridor in for humanitarian aid. So stop talking nonsense. These ears ain't listening. And the more you talk nonsense, the more I'll tell people that you're lying. These videos will keep going and keep going and keep going. I thought when you stood down as First Minister, it would affect my YouTube channel, because I used to do quite a lot of videos about you when you're in the role of First Minister. However, the YouTube channel has doubled in size since you stood down as First Minister. And you keep giving me material. It's fantastic. You are my favourite subject. And I look forward to 2026 in the hope that you stand for re-election in the Holyrood election, because you are currently my MSP. And if you're still standing, I'm standing against you. There you are. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing and hit the notifications button. But most importantly of all, unless you're Humza Yousaf, tells we porky pies all the time, not you, but
everyone else, have a great day. Cheerio, bye now.